All right, there's a second take again. This is the third time this week I have to do a second take for a video, but the last one came out really long. So I'll try to do it as fast as I can without getting too bogged down in the details. So before we go on, the topic today is what the hell is the point of doing diversity education, all of this stuff about racial sensitivity or whatever, when ultimately we're still going to have the education system considered racist and whatever. It is pointless. We have an education system that is so broken, but this is the problem that they keep trying to solve, even though it's already been basically addressed or attempted to have been addressed several times, and they don't get the right. They just can't get the right recipe, so they keep trying and failing apparently. If you look at the media. So before we go on, please like the video and subscribe to my BitChute. By the way, if you're subscribed to my BitChute, it's actually somewhat more likely you'll get my notifications apparently, because BitChute videos, even though I have far less subscribers, seem to be getting more views. So something's up, right YouTube? So this appeared in USA Today today. It was republished. It apparently came from the Rochester Democrat-Chronicle. And they talked to a bunch of kids who are black kids in Rochester's metro area of Monroe County in upstate New York. And they apparently think that, notwithstanding the fact that in many cases they are getting bused into school districts out in the suburbs, they feel that those school districts are racist and they are very frustrated, but they don't have any inkling of what to do about it, and all they can do is vent to the newspaper. Let me see here.
The word retarded, from the whole switching the word retarded from that to respect. Don't say the R word. Why don't we do anything not saying the N word? But nothing happens when these kids say the N word. Me and my friends have gone to administration here saying we don't think that word is acceptable. We shouldn't hear that. Like, this school, like, I should feel comfortable going to school, and I don't always feel comfortable because people say that word, and I don't like it. For an example, some student posted on their social media from a party about the N-word, and we went to the administration about that, and all the administration did was say, take it down. So they took it down. But it doesn't change their behavior. It doesn't change anything. And so now I know not to go to administration if someone says that, because...
So this lady, her name is Candy Jackson, is complaining because somebody posted something. She didn't even say if he called or she called somebody the N-word. She said that they used it. Okay, they might have been discussing the N-word or something. But she feels that it wasn't enough that the school told this person to remove a published post on their social media, which is not connected to the school. Okay? And force them to do it. So they're controlling the child's or teen's ability to say whatever they want outside of school grounds, which is, that's an infringement on their private life. She thinks that doesn't go far enough. Well, what exactly is she proposing they do? We don't know. So they go into this case, a few cases in fact. One person, an 11th grader at Fairport High School, has avoided the pitfalls of many other suburban students of color. He takes several advanced placement classes and doesn't have any disciplinary problems. So they already make the assumption, these writers are making the assumption, they're saying they avoided the pitfalls of many other suburban students of color. Okay? So they're already assuming in the article on the first line that many students of color are having pitfalls where they wouldn't be in advanced placement classes, and they probably would have disciplinary problems. So this is they're already refuting their own proposition. Their proposition is that it's unfair that these students are branded as being problematic and suspended from school and things like that and not given the proper sensitivity because these schools are in suburbia and not used to people from the inner city or people from not even from the inner city. Some of them are just minority students, especially black students. By the way, they didn't talk to any of the other ethnic groups at the school for this article. Even so, he said he is constantly confronted by the sort of overt racism that many white people believed disappeared generations ago. He recalled one instance where another student said that black people come from the jungle. Black people commit the vast majority of crimes, the white student continued, so the country would be better off without them. So I want to say this. If you have a confrontation with another student that says something racist, then the first question I want to ask is this, okay? How did this come up? And also, what are you supposed to do? You can't control somebody's thoughts and what they think about you. The only thing you can do is possibly try to reason with them. And if you can't reason with them, then what's the point of even having any interactions with them? But going to the newspaper and recounting the incident about somebody saying something racist to you is not news. Okay, things happen every day where people say things that can be construed as not or insensitive to another person, and that's the way life is. I feel that teachers let the microaggressions, this is what he says, boil over by not fixing the situation when it starts, he said. At the same time, the lack of black teachers in the school means there's no one to check these white teachers when they let things happen. Black students in districts across Monroe County provided a lengthy list of racist incidents, most of them within the last school year. They ranged from subtle but persistent prejudice, white students touching their hair or complimenting them for talking white, to being taunted with the word Trump or called the N-word. Okay, if you're being taunted with the word Trump, I don't know what the hell you did, because that has nothing to do with race. Because he's Orange Man. Orange is not a race. It's just a mindset, I guess. Every day there's a lot of racial comments made at school, directly basically to anyone who's not a straight white person. Hilton student Mark Simmons said, because of where we are geographically and how little connected we are to the real world, people just are afraid of anyone who doesn't look alike. Black students in Penfield said many white students believe they can use the N-word liberally as long as they have an N card, meaning they have a black friend who supposedly has given them permission to do so. I should feel comfortable going to school, and I don't always because people say that word, 12th grader Kennedy Jackson said. The high school administration, they said, did not address the problem when they brought it up. Nadia Hempel, an 11th grader, added, then if you speak out, they brand you as an angry black girl. Penfield Superintendent Thomas Putnam, previously the principal at the high school, said he was surprised to hear that. Honestly, as a leader and someone who lives in this district, it emotionally hurt me, he said. So this is the one of the people that was interviewed. No, this is the wrong article. Sorry, guys. Well, we'll forgo that one. But in that one, she says basically that they're not teaching. I have to show you this. I watched this earlier. I was stunned that they thought that this was a coherent opinion.
I think it is important that we know the history of slavery that is a history of this country, because it affects us to this day, and like the systematic racism that is built around the government, everything. So I think that's important. But I feel like even when we do talk about
systematic racism built around the government, okay,
we don't talk about it in the right way or in depth enough, or have people understand the lasting effects that it left on this country. And people think, oh, civil rights movement, Martin Luther Jr., everything's over, no racism. And now whenever you bring up that topic, it's like, we solved that already. Why are we still talking about it?
Well, I think one of the reasons that you might not be the best person to ask about this is because you called him Martin Luther Jr. And I believe the founder of Protestantism, I don't think his son, Martin Luther Jr., was such a significant historical figure. I believe she might have met Martin Luther King Jr., but that incoherent babble is, it really does. See, this is the problem. People feel bad because of what they consider to be racism and what probably in many cases would be racism if these incidents are occurring. But they don't have any real ideas about what to do except to complain more and call for more education and whatever. Well, education has been really that's been the medium for trying to quote unquote solve this for many years. And apparently all the people who keep trying are failing. So what are they? What they're basically doing now is they're eating each other alive. And this is what they say: districts uniformly profess to taking the issue of racial disparity seriously through professional development, recruiting minority teachers, and supporting minority students already in their buildings. White and non-white students alike are helping push that change forward through diversity clubs at their high schools, as well as the countywide Rock to Change summits focusing on racism. So these are all the measures that they're doing. They're trying to hire more minority people. They're trying to uh, do professional development, which I assume means professional courses about diversity, and supporting minority students already in their school buildings. I don't know what that means. And they do these diversity clubs at their high schools, and they also do Rock to Change summits. So they're doing these extracurricular activities in order to. So what else do you want them to do? Just have everybody sit in the same room and watch Care Bears all day? Part of the sting of racist incidents, minority students reported, is a lack of adults with whom to discuss them. They reported ham-handed attempts to empathize from some white teachers and outright disbelief from others. I think it's in the teacher's head that they want to be more racially sensitive, but they go about it the wrong way. Well, what the hell does that even mean? Black teachers in Monroe suburban schools remain exceptionally scarce. A 2017 report from Education Trust New York showed that only 1% of teachers and 3% of administrators in those districts are black or Latino. Most students attend schools where every teacher is white. So, first of all, what's the definition of suburbia? Second of all, if teachers who live in these communities are white, then what do you want? They could try to recruit from other areas, but if you don't know, Rochester, New York is basically buried under mountains of snow literally all the time. It's almost like Alaska in New York. Maybe I'm exaggerating. You know, the summer is not quite as bad, but you know what I'm talking about. If you're from the Great Lakes area, you get a ton of snow. And we get it here in Ohio. And Rochester, I believe I've heard, it's much worse. Rochester and Buffalo are like ground zero for snowmageddon all the time. So you have this issue of how do you get people to move to a place where they can be close enough to the school that they don't have to basically be, even when there's not a snow day, some people have a hard time getting to their job. That happens in a lot of places. So they said local districts, indeed nearly all urban and suburban districts in New York have been trying to recruit, hire, and retain more teachers of color, but the supply is far short of the demand, and out-of-town candidates can be difficult to attract to upstate New York. So these people, they're asking to solve a problem that they themselves don't have the solution to. How do you get more minority students who are willing to move to upstate New York, which, by the way, is in the middle of an economic depression? In their absence, minority students reported lacking any ally who could support them and also potentially affect their negative behavior, the negative behavior of white teachers. Now, they didn't talk about any negative behavior on the part of the white teachers. They just said, so the negative behavior is apparently that they can't understand some of the problems that they have, but that's not negative behavior. That would be miscommunication possibly. We all know what it's like to know people that think that you only have a certain path. Like you can only sell drugs or play basketball. Rush Henrietta 12th grader Isaac Beru said, I don't talk to any teachers, anyone here about personal problems. I just don't feel comfortable. So if you're not comfortable talking to people about your problems, then don't go to the then what's the solution? Do you go to the newspaper and talk to them about how you don't have anybody to talk about? Well, you don't feel comfortable talking about the people who are closest to you, so you're going to go to a newspaper, a local newspaper. So then they say at the same time, schools suspend black students at significantly higher rates than white students and for longer periods of time. At Brighton High School, for example, black students were 9 times more likely to be suspended out of school, at least in 2015 to 16. So they had a number of these high schools here, and the ratio. So they said here in Brighton, black students lost 67 days to out of school suspension per 100 black students, compared to 23 days per 100 students and 6 per Hispanic students. Now, in this one, Brockport, why did they even have it? They had one student who lost almost 300 days. Isn't that interesting how they would arrive at this? So you would wonder, perhaps there's a little issue that would make it a little more understandable why this disparity happens. And I have found that issue, and it's not very hard. So if you look at Brockport, New York, they have a population. So they have a high school of 1,000 students, which is even small. My high school was about 4,000 students, I think, maybe even less. And I guess this high school, apparently, Jeff Van Gundy went there. So it can't be that good of a high school. So let me see here. Brockport, New York is a town of only about 8,300 people. Okay? Only about 8,300 people, maybe even less now. So you have the demographics are about 3.8% African American, which I did the math, comes out to about 328 black people out of a town of 8,300. So how many students go to the high school that happen to be black? At most it would be 32. Well, if you go by proportion, it would be 32 people, 32 black students. So I would say that if there were a couple students who were, suspended, or if they went to, or let's say they had some sort of illness or something, but if there was one student even that had some severe problem, that would dramatically skew the graph, because you're talking about 32 students, but this statistic over here is per 100 students. So this is ridiculous, and I think it's astounding how they are, blowing this out of proportion over here. Many local districts, including Greece, said they are examining their practices and assumptions around discipline, often by instituting restorative justice practices, which is garbage, to reduce the reliance on suspensions and keep more students in the classroom rather than at home. LaRue Lewis McCoy, a scholar at New York University who studies the experiences of minority students in suburban schools, said there is a larger problem in terms of, quote, the way that black students are read differently from students who are non-black. The same action, a flippant comment to a teacher or a minor altercation in the hallway, can be interpreted very differently depending on who does it. You look at who gets suspended, who gets access to the best housing and medical care, and rather than saying explicitly that someone is different, we build systems that allow people to be sorted in certain ways and then look back and say, I'm not sure what happened, he said. So I looked up this guy, LaRue Lewis McCoy, and he wrote this article in 2018 that said, everything was made for white kids because this school is made from white kids, because this country was made for white kids, quoting a kid at one of these high schools. And he goes on to praise this documentary called America to Me, which was produced in last year, I guess. And he says, if there is one thing that is glaringly absent from America to Me, it is the voices and experiences of white students and families who accrue the spoils of suburbia, whether traversing downtown or selecting advanced placement courses. So he's basically calling AP classes a white privilege thing. So then He goes and says, first, by speaking with white families, I heard their perspectives and experiences rather than simply inferring them from the accounts of others. Other scholars who studied suburbs, such as John Obu, who only studied black families and attributed academic failure to black children's academic disengagement, while assuming white families' achievement was a result of hard work and high functioning. In the social sciences, long traditions of deficit thinking limit us from seeing what's actually happening. Second, once I put the voices of white and black families in conversation, the relational dynamic between the two became clearer. Black families were not simply disadvantaged, white families were hyper advantaged, and they routinely hoarded resources. When it comes to suburban spaces, including the villages of Oak Park and River Forest, the history of racial exclusion is not simply in the past. It shapes where people live today and how people are received in public spaces like schools. The critics' responses to America to me have been favorable, but as I read comments on YouTube, IMDb, and other sites, they are far more critical. So now he's going to bitch about commenters. Many of the comments argue that if there is an issue with black academic success in the school, it is rooted in black children's effort and their home environment. This old trope has long been challenged by research, which he doesn't cite, but it remains, but it should be it. There's a typo there. Remains a common explanation among popular audiences, even educators who are meant to help produce equitable learning environments. The entrenched belief in black dysfunction and normative white responses is captured in one telling moment in an interview in episode 1. Sammy Kester, a student on the cheerleading team, confesses that Deanna Taloan, the lead cheerleading coach who is white, is now different. The Coach D that I used to know from when I was 12, she was a lot nicer. She did tell me that she has to put herself in authority more because all the girls are black and she has to put up her own fight to make sure that she gets what she wants. Coach D argues she coaches the girls who are predominantly black. The drill team is predominantly white, like a football coach, and she is not afraid to hurt feelings or be bluntly honest. She prepares her speech with girlfriends as she wears a Beyonce-themed shirt. Her approach is met with mixed responses from the black girls under her guidance. Some suggest she yells at us like a mom, while others highlight Coach D's approach may be rooted in her racial mismatch, which heightens attitudes and sassiness. The filmmakers don't make an effort to suggest which came first, adults' attitudes or children's responses, but it becomes clear that often the most well-intentioned can create dangerous environments for black children. There's nothing dangerous about this. There's nothing dangerous about it. She's still a coach coaching a cheerleading team. Nobody got hurt, but there's tension. Tension does not mean danger. In episode 4, viewers got a deeper look at Aaron Podolner, a white physics teacher who was born and raised in Oak Park, and his approaches to race inside and outside of the classroom. He invites, I'm not sure how much choice they had to actually opt out, 2 black students, Jada Bufford and Charles Donaldson, to read his memoir on race and comment on how he's handled race in the classroom. In the classroom, Jada challenges Podolner to respect the boundaries of students and mentions how when she asked him not to comment or make jokes about her hair, he persisted. She points out that in his attempt to relate, he is missing the very students he claims to care about. Podolner misses her point entirely and tone deathly. That, this guy just needs to learn how to fucking write in the English language. Okay, he's supposed to be a professor at NYU, by the way. Tone deathly centers himself and his difficulties as he responds. I think it's hardest because we get a lot of pressure here as teachers to make a difference, to fix black people, to improve scores. We're not given any ways to do it, so that's like someone like you could be a great resource to us teachers. So he is criticizing white teachers for trying to do a better job of educating black students, which means that why should they even try? Why even try? This is all bull crap. You are going to have these racial farmers. All they do is they plant the seeds of the future of racism. It used to be racism was about slavery. Then it became about different rules that give more rights to white people as opposed to black people. And then it became about what people can say in their own, what people can say in their own homes or whatever. And now it's about trying to attack people for trying to do a better job. So that's what I think about this. And, I think that I actually could have done a lot more content on it that I found, but I think I'm going to cut it short for right now. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to my other channel on BitChute and on CocoScope. My second YouTube channel is Razor Ray Special Cuts, and you can find all my other social media behind me right here. Bye-bye.